Hello everyone, welcome to the next module, and in this module we will talk about how you can use AWS Lake Formation to grant access to your data. So let's get started. Before we move on to the topic, I want to repeat one more time that all the videos and labs you see in this crash course, they are all interconnected, they are all depending on each other. So it is recommended that you see video in a sequence and you do lab in a sequence so that you can complete all the labs and you can understand the topics in a better way. So with that, we have already talked about Glue data catalog in the previous previous module, and we also created a table under the lab. Now in this particular module, we are going to talk about data access control. Now, why I am talking about data access control now? There are many other topics like crawlers, job, workflows. They are yet to be discussed, but why I am talking about data access control before talking about those topics? And the reason is that when I try to use the crawler or the glue job or workflow, they will need certain permission on the data. And unless those crawlers or jobs have those permission, they cannot do their thing. They cannot perform the task assigned to them. So it is very important we understand data access control upfront so that when we use crawlers or jobs or workflow at a later point of time, we can assign those jobs or crawlers the required permission and we understand what we are doing at that point of time. So I'll give you a few examples over here. So for instance, suppose you have got some data into S3 bucket, and then you have cataloged that data, and some users want to simply make query on that data. In this case, these users need to have select access on that data. Similarly, there could be a scenario where there is a glue job which is trying to read data from, say, JDBC endpoint which has been cataloged and is trying to write to an S3 bucket which is also cataloged. In this case, this glue job actually needs select access over here and insert access, like select access at the source and insert access at the target. Similarly, there could be scenario where you will have a glue database, and then in that glue database, you want to use a crawler to create a table. In that case, you need to have create table permission. So you can see whether a user is trying to access the data or a glue job is trying to ETL data from a source to a destination, or even a crawler when trying to create a glue catalog table in a database, they all need permissions, and these permissions are given using AWS Lake Formation, and that's why we are covering this topic upfront so that you understand how data access control works. So you can give permission in glue catalog at many levels. The first level you give permission is you can give permission at the database level. And in database, you give permission like can someone create table into this data in this database or not? Can someone alter the database? Can someone drop the database? Can someone describe or fetch the information about the database? Or you also can get a super permission. That means you have got all the permissions granted to you. So at database level, you can have these 5 different types of permission which can be granted. Now, if you go below database, then we have tables. At table, different set of permissions work. So at table level, you have permissions like select, that means can someone query data from this table. Insert means can someone insert data. Can someone delete data? Can someone use describe permission to fetch information about the data or more like information about the table? Can someone alter the table? Can someone drop the table? And of course, you can also have you can also have a super permission in which you have all the permissions included, like you're a super user. So at table level, you have these 7 different types of permission which you can grant to your users or roles who are going to work with the data. Now, if you go below tables, you have columns and rows. You can also give permissions at the column and row level, and that is called more of a column level access and row level access. And these column and row level access are provided through data filters. And data filter is a very new feature which was recently announced in the reInvent. And in data filters, actually you can include or exclude certain columns. That means you can restrict access to certain columns in a table. And you can also create some filter criteria to also restrict access to some certain row level. So you can actually restrict access not only at the table level, but also to certain row level or certain column level by selecting those columns by providing filter criteria for your rows. And by virtue of that, you can actually give column and row level access to your data in the table as well. And all these things is configured using data filter. Okay. So one thing is very important. When you're using data filter and you're trying to access your data using Athena, you need to create a special work group. So by default, Athena will have its own work group, by default work group, which is called primary. And if you want, and that primary is good enough to see the table data and everything, and you have seen that in the previous demo which we did with the module 2. But if you're trying to see data filters in action, then you have to create a special work group with the name AWS Athena Lake Formation. And with that work group, actually you can query data using data filters. So keep this fact in mind when you're using the data filters. And that was a very small topic, because all you need to understand is that what kind of permission works at the database level, what kind of permission works at the table level, what kind of permission you can apply at the column or the row level. Now what we are going to do is that we are going to create a data filter, and we are going to use this data filter to show you how you can restrict access at the for the table data at the column and row level, and then we will use query inside Amazon Athena to validate whether our access control is working or not. So let's jump onto the AWS console and do this lab activity. So here I have logged into AWS console, and you can see here I have logged into Ireland region. So we are using Ireland as a region for all our lab activity, and I will recommend you to follow Ireland as a region so that we are in the same region. Then I have logged in using a AWS user account which has got administrative, it's an IAM account which has got administrative access to the account. Now, if I go to Athena, in one of the previous labs, in fact, in the just previous lab, we did created a database called DojoDB, and under that DojoDB you have a customers table. And if you query this customers table, it will show you the kind of data stored into your S3 bucket. Now, this is the data we get. We get customer ID, customer name, customer email, and territory. What we are going to do is that we are going to create some data filters, and those data filters will create some column level restriction and also row level restriction. So I'm going to create 2 data filters. One data filter will provide a row level restriction only for the NA territory customers, and other will use EMEA territory users. And then I will create 2 users, NA user and EMEA user. And NA user will be able to see only data of the NA customers or North America customers, and EMEA user will be able to see the records or rows of the EMEA customers only. So Pretty straightforward. I'm going to create first two IAM users, then I will create two data filters to do column and row level restriction, and my row level restriction is on territory, and the two restriction I'm providing is in one data filter I'm going to restrict user to only North America customers. In other data filter I'm going to restrict my users to only EMEA customers, and then using these two data filters I'm going to restrict access to my IAM users, and then we'll simply log in with those IAM users and see whether my restricted access is working or not. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to create two IAM users. So I'll simply go to IAM. And in IAM, I am going to create two users. So I go to my users here, and I want to add users. And these users, I'll simply say the one user is say NA user, and I'll simply give it a console access, nothing more than that. I will give it a custom password. And then I don't want this user to change the password, because to be honest, after this demo I'm going to delete this user. So next, and then in permission I want to simply, just to keep things simple, I'm going to give it an administrative access for now, just to keep it simple, and I'm going to anyway delete this user once I'm done. And then I simply review, and in fact, let me do this way. And create user. So I've got my NA user created. Now I'm going to create another user, and that will be EMEA user. So I simply create one more user. In fact, both users I could have created together, but it's okay. I missed that chance. EMEA user. Again, this is just console access, not more than that. My custom password. And then I don't want it to change the password for next logon. Permissions. Same way I attach it to the administrative access. And next, review and create users. So now I have got two users created to me, NA user and EMEA user. The NA user can see only the customer records of North America users, and EMEA user can only see customer records of EMEA customers. That's how I'm going to control access to them. So after having done that, we come back to Lake Formation. So we go to Lake Formation. Okay. And in Lake Formation, what I want to do, first I want to create two data filters. Okay. So in Lake Formation, in the left hand side, I click on data filters. And you can see here, we already have our database and our table created, which we did in the previous module lab. So I'm going to create a data filter. Let's create a new filter. And let's call it, I will call it NA filter, North America filter. The database is DojoDB. The table is customers only, and then I want to just include some columns. So I want to put some restriction on the column. So the column restriction I want to put is for NA user is the person can see only customer name and territory, nothing more than that in the columns. And row wise, it will be territory equal to North America. So the person can see only those records where territory is equal to North America. So this data filter is pretty straightforward. Any user who has been given access using this data filter, actually on the customer table, the person can see only customer name and territory. as columns, and only those rows where territory is equal to North America. So let's, in fact, let me copy this because I'm going to reuse it, and let's create it. So my NA filter is ready. Now I'm going to create another filter, that is my EMEA filter. So I call it EMEA filter. Again, my database is DojoDB, my table is customers, and in this case include columns, and I'm simply going to say last time I selected customer name and territory. This time I will select customer email and territory, just to demonstrate that both have different access. Then in row level filter, I'm simply going to say the user can see only EMEA records. So only those records where territory is equal to EMEA, and I create the filter. So both of my filters are now created. Now I need to give access to my NA user and EMEA user using these filters. So for that, I can go to data lake permissions. I can say I want to grant some access. The first user is my EMEA user. So my EMEA user, I want to give, I'm going to use a named data catalog resources on the database, Dojo database, on the table customers. It is my EMEA user, so I'm going to select EMEA filter. So simply apply EMEA filter, and I want to give select permission. So that using this filter, the user will have only select permissions. If you look at the permission again, I'm saying that to the EMEA user, I am giving access to the Dojo database on customers table using the column level, row level restrictions defined in my EMEA filter, and I want to give select permission, and I simply grant it. So my EMEA user has now got the access, and you can see my EMEA user access has been defined over here. Now I'm going to grant access to the North America user. So if you click on the North America user, NA user, again I'm going for the named data resource on my Dojo database, on my customers table using North America filter. And then I'm simply giving select permission. So same philosophy, same method to my North America user, access to Dojo database on the table customers using the row level, column level filters defined in my NA filter, and my select permission on the data, and I grant it. So you can see here now my EMEA user, North America users both have got EMEA filter and North America based filter access. So my access has been granted to these users, which restrict them to certain rows and columns only. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it, but before I test it, I'm going to Athena console. I will create a new work group, and that work group then can be used by these users to query the data. So let's go to Athena again. And in Athena, I want to create a new work group. So you can see primary work group is already there, but well, I have already got an Amazon Athena Lake Formation work group. So it looks like I have already created this work group over here. But let me show you how you can create it, because I'm sure you don't have this work group. So the way you create the work group, you go to work groups over here. Then you simply say, I want to create a work group. Give this work group exactly the same name I am typing over here, Amazon Athena Lake Formation. You simply select I want to use automatic query engine. Then you browse and you say come back here. So for the engine version selection, simply go for automatic. Then browse and give location equal to, if I go to the location, simply give location equal to Athena. So Remember that we created an Athena folder in this particular bucket in the previous module. So you simply provide that location, leave everything as it is, and you simply create the work group. And if you click on this create work group, the work group will be created. But in my case, I don't need to create that work group because this work group is already created. Looks like I did it earlier. Only thing I want to verify here is if I have got my S3 bucket correct. So let me click on edit over here to check if my S3 bucket is correct. So it's all automatic and it's going to something else. So what I will do, I will browse it. I will change it so that we are at the same S3 bucket. So I choose that it should be S3 Dojo Glue Lake 01 Athena, and rest everything remains the same. I simply save changes. Okay, so my work group is already created. Now what I'm going to do, that I'm going to log off as an AWS user, and I will log in as a NA user, North America user. And then what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to come to Athena, make query, and see if I see data based on my restricted access or not. So let me log in back as an NA user. I have logged in back as NA user. You can see here now my user is NA user. Now I'm simply going to Athena. And in Athena, what I'm going to do is that if I check my setting and see, first thing, since I'm a new user, so I'm sure my Athena console is not configured. So if I go to my settings, I click on manage and look, yeah, my query result location is not configured. So first I'm going to configure that. And that location will be, again, I'm going to use this Athena folder for that location. Something similar we did in the previous module lab as well. So we are simply repeating that step. So for this, because it's a new user, so this configuration is not done for this particular user. So I have to provide a sync location for my Athena. So this is the sync location for my Athena. I save it. Okay, so after changing this setting over here where I have provided S3 Dojo Glue Lake Athena as the sync location for my Athena configuration, now I'm going to editor. And in editor, you can see that I have access to Dojo database and I have got access to customer, but I have got access only to customer name and territory column. So first thing first, I want to make sure that I have selected work group as Amazon Athena Lake Formation, not the primary, because the data filter works with this particular work group only. Then I have simply running a query select star from Dojo database customers table. If I run this query, you will see that I have got the results and it should be there any moment now. Yeah, I have got the results. And since I am an NA user, I see only records where territory is equal to NA. So you can see both my column and row level filter are working for my NA user. Now next, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to log off as a NA user and log in back as an EMEA user. And then we will see if my EMEA user data access has been applied or not. So let me log in back as an EMEA. Okay, so I have logged in back as an EMEA user. You can see I'm a EMEA user now. Now if I go to Athena, first thing first, since I have logged in as a new user, that means my Athena is not configured. So first thing first, I will go to setting and I will configure my Athena sync location. So I go to settings, let me show it again. So I go to settings, I click on manage, then I simply provide my Dojo Glue Lake Athena folder as my sync location. I save it. Then second thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to change my work group from primary to Amazon Athena Lake Formation. And once I do that, I can go back to editor. In editor, you can see I have got access to Dojo database and I have got access to customers table. If I expand customer table, I see different set of columns. I don't see customer name or territory. I see customer email and territory, because that is what access has been granted to EMEA user. Now, if I run this query saying select star from Dojo database customers, it's going to show me the records from this table based on my access permission. And you can see here with the result that I have access only to the customer email and territory columns, and only those rows where territory is equal to EMEA. So you saw the example where we created data filters and we assigned access to two users these filters based on access to two users based on these filters, and then we logged in using those two users to see if the user can see data based on their access control or not, and it's working fine. So that was the activities we wanted to do today to show you how you can restrict access to data using data filters, which shows you table level access and also row and column level access. So that was all for today's module. In the next module, we are going to talk about Glue crawler, which can be used to automatically catalog your data stored into various locations like S3 or Redshift or JDBC data databases. So see you again in the next module. Bye-bye.